Welcome to the Petersen's Bowhunting Podcast. All bow hunting, all the time. Now, here's your host, Associate Editor Mark Demko.
So, hey, everybody, welcome to the Bowhunting Podcast. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we had Dustin Huff on the program. He took the new number 2 all-time typical buck in the state of Indiana. And today, we're really honored to have David Jones. David Jones took one of the other largest bucks taken in the state last year in Indiana. David, welcome to the program.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, how's it going?
Good. You know, when you think big buck states, I think some of the ones that immediately come to mind in the Iowa, Ohio, Kentucky, but Indiana is really right there producing some incredible quality bucks, you know, and certainly you may not hear as much about it, but it's producing some tremendous antler deer every year, such is the case with your deer. You took a 182 plus non-typical last year, and you have quite a story behind that. So let's start at the beginning. David, how long have you been hunting and how did you get into bow hunting?
Yeah, it's been about 21 years now. I started when I was about 16 years old. Hand down bow from my dad. I shot compounds and recurves and stuff like that as a kid, but actually started deer hunting when I was around 16 years old with dad's old bow. It was I think it was a Petersen spoiler, like 85, 90 pound draw, had, steel cables and 2-pin sight. So you pretty much could shoot to 20 and maybe 25. And the pin gap on those was huge, you know, shooting, I think 23-17s or something like that.
Yeah.
So needless to say, I shot over the backs of a lot of deer because no rangefinders back then. And I didn't actually start killing any deer until I'd say around maybe 2006 or 7 with a bow. And by that time I'd upgraded to a buddy's hand-me-down bow. And I think it was maybe more like a 2005 or so. So I had a little bit shooting flatter trajectory and didn't have a rangefinder still, but so yeah, I've been hunting and trapping and fishing my whole life since I was a little kid. Started deer hunting when I was 8 by myself. I'd started trapping and running, doing all that stuff. My dad just trapped for a living. So I was always outside doing stuff with him like that since I was, old enough to get around on my own. But when I was 9, I actually got a funny story. When I was 8, one of the biggest bucks I ever saw, muzzleloader hunting, I think it was one of the early inlines back then, but it had a fold down rear sight.
Uh-huh.
And sure enough, this giant buck came by and I took my one shot at him. Wasn't big enough and strong enough to reload. So Dad only sent me out with one ready to go piece of ammo. And that back sight was folded down and totally missed him. And we've been kicking ourselves ever since. Dad's like, oh, I should have been right there with you. You're 8 years old, not thinking he's going to get a chance at a buck of a lifetime, but we've always joked that was my buck of a lifetime. I missed him, but followed it up the next year when I was 9, had an over and under 20 gauge.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up getting 4 deer that year, and I've been pretty successful ever since. But this year is definitely one of the biggest bucks that I've ever seen, never mind to actually get a chance to take a crack at. So.
Yeah, we're going to dive into that, but this is a deer that had a 27-inch main beams, and I think the spread was just over 22 inches. And you could talk a little more about that, but go on. But so how did you first identify this deer? Was it something where it just showed up one day? Had you seen it on cameras in previous years?
Yeah, so I killed the deer in November of 2021, and in January 2021, we actually got some trail camera pictures of this buck. We're pretty sure it's the same one, and he was big then, not as big as he was in the next year. But it was late archery. I think archery season went till like January 7th or something like that year. And so I put up a portable stand like a lone wolf and was trying to get close to where we thought he was coming in and out of this certain area, but never did see him again. And it was cold then, so pretty hard to sit all day or anything like that. But most of the pictures that we had of him, I think, were in the night. So he definitely was more of a nocturnal deer. And that's also what we kind of found out later on too, for some neighbors who, after I killed him, started sharing some photos and a lot of nighttime activity. They had actually been feeding him. I don't know how far away, over a mile, I think, away.
Uh-huh.
and they were seeing him all the way through August. And then in September, they said, boom, he just disappeared. And I never saw him in person until the 30 seconds to 2 minutes before I got a chance to shoot an arrow at him. So,
And that's interesting. You say that. You hear that as a common theme. No matter where people hunt in the state, you'll see a deer on camera for a while, and then it'll just totally vanish. Whether that's as the season started, as you get into that what people might call the lull in October, or whatever, and then it'll show up for a short window right before the rut or into the rut. So it's interesting that you mentioned that. And then the other thing is you may not have heard a lot about the deer prior, but once somebody harvested deer, such in your case, then you start to hear other guys had it on camera, or the people picked it up on trail camera, sometimes even pretty far away, as you mentioned there. But so now, what part of the state were you hunting? Are you hunting public land, private land?
No, it's private land. It's a farm. It's actually one of my favorite farms to just kind of go and relax. And I've killed a few does out of the stand, had chances at bucks, but none of them were ever big enough really to shoot. So always passed them. The place I think it's only around 60 acres. But had hay on it for years, and then it went over to row crops the last couple of years. But it's just a nice quiet spot off the road, way back. It's kind of quite the climb to get up there. It's pretty rough ground. So there's actually a little hill that's probably 40 feet vertical going up, but it's very steep trying to get up there into it. So it's kind of a challenge, but not many people go back in that area just due to it being so rough. So I was just back there, just one of my favorite places to hang out in the fall. There's quite a few oak trees, so you usually get quite a bit of deer just browsing around, turkeys, things like that. And that's just one of my spots that I went to, knew the wind was going to be good for it, and decided to sit there until I couldn't sit there any longer. So,
yeah, and you think that's part of the puzzle there, that it was sort of a sanctuary spot because it wasn't easy access. Maybe there wasn't a lot of pressure.
I just don't think there's a whole lot of archery hunters back there in that area. Gun season comes, there'll be guys pretty close to us. Opening day, opening weekend, but for the most part, I hardly ever see anybody back there. So it's a pretty good spot.
Yeah. Now, you took this deer in November. Let's talk about the specifics of that hunt. You'd obviously hunted in the fall. How did your season go when you were out in, say, October, and then as you were moving towards November?
Well, so this year was definitely an outlier for me compared to my previous years. I usually hunt maybe 30, 40 days a year. But 2021 season, just had some family stuff going on. Kind of lost a little bit of my drive. Just some hard stuff going through. Lost an uncle, and other things going on. So I really didn't get to hunt that much, which is funny because the year before I killed 8 deer, 4 of them with bow. And that year, last year, 2021, I think I only got 3 deer that year. So just not as many hours put in. I did go out to Colorado in August and hunted for mule deer with a bow, and I had a bear tag with a rifle, but I just hunted most of the time with the bow while I was mule deer hunting. Spent, I think, 6 days out there. I don't really remember how many days I hunted total, but not much because, believe it or not, this is the first buck that I actually saw from the stand that year. So people are going to be jealous and mad when they hear that, but I've passed on tons and tons of 130s and 140s through the years. So I put in my time. But at the same time, I never would have imagined I'd see this giant coming by.
Now, before we get too far into this story, you mentioned you were mule deer hunting out west in August. Did you have any luck when you were bow hunting for muleys?
I got close to some does. Got about 80 yards to a decent buck, which I would have taken because it was all public land. But didn't have he saw me coming. It was too late. It was really hot, dry, and it was pretty tough stalking weather. So, and I'd never been bow hunting for mule deer out there before. I've done a lot of elk hunting, but never done any mule deer hunting before. So, and just happened to luck in to get drawn for both mule deer and bear. So I just went for it and tried it out and had a great time as usual out there. It's a beautiful place to be when you can't hunt much back here. So.
Yeah, no. Back to your home state where you were hunting. If I heard you correctly, this was actually the first buck you saw. And, sometimes that's the way things go. You can hunt hard all season and not have any luck, and then sometimes the cards or whatever fate just falls in your favor. And this sounds like obviously knowing that you were in a good spot and having an idea that the buck was there, that things worked out really well for you. But now let's talk about the day you got that deer. How'd that hunt go?
Yeah. So got in early morning, way before daylight, climbed up. It's a funny tree stand that's been there since we bought the farm. And I've always liked it. It's got a very tiny platform though. So my dad never sits there. He's always wanting to replace it. And I'm like, I don't know, there's something about it. I just like it. Ended up seeing maybe 5 does that morning early. And after about an hour after daylight, didn't see much. Had a big flock of turkeys, maybe 20 or 25 turkeys come through. And they started feeding. So I was facing north. So over to the left. So the northwest, these turkeys came through feeding on acorns, I assume, or whatever else, grubs or whatever was around those acorns. They ended up kind of feeding around behind me, and I was watching them for a while. And then it was, like I said, back 9:15, 9:30. Didn't really expect to have much activity that time of the day, just from previous experience. Seems like it doesn't really start picking back up until 11 or so. So I was actually, like I told you earlier, I lost an uncle in August of that year. Mm-hmm. And he was supposed to take his granddaughter, who's my cousin or second cousin. He was supposed to take her deer hunting the following weekend, which was opening weekend of gun season. So I grabbed my phone and I started texting with her, just asking her the basic stuff, first time hunter things, making sure, trying to pick up where he left off. Just didn't want her to be disappointed. She already had lost her granddad and I lost my uncle, and just kind of catching up with her, making sure she was looking forward to our hunt the following weekend. And I probably texted with her for maybe 5 or 6 minutes, something like that. And I actually slid my phone in my pocket, and it wasn't maybe a minute or two later, I heard what I thought was the turkeys behind me. And when I peeked around my right shoulder, I saw antlers coming. He was probably 40 yards away. And he was angling a little bit away from me, it looked like, from what I thought, but he ended up coming about 20 yards over my right shoulder, and I'm right-handed. So by the time I first saw him, I had to reach over and grab my bow and shuffle my feet, around to be able to at least get set up to potentially shoot behind me and to my right, which is one of the harder shots for shooting out of a tree stand for me. And I didn't know he was as big as he was, but I knew that I was always trying to get something. I've killed some deer in the 150s, 140s, never killed a buck bigger than 150 with my bow though. I think the biggest buck I've killed was like a 143 or something like that. And this is all just, I've never really scored deer besides just kind of guessing on my own, trying to measure it to the form. So I could be a little off, but good deer. Killed some good deer with my bow, but this one was definitely going to be way bigger than anything I've ever killed before. So I was ready to shoot him, but I had no clue what he was till later on. He came in to about 20 yards. He was quartering to me pretty heavy, but there was really not going to be any chance at a broadside shot just with the trees that were in the way off that side. And why he was marching through in that direction, just kind of was a strange spot. I usually have the deer over my left side. That's why I like that tree stand so well for bow hunting. But anyway, so he was there about 20 yards quartering to me. And I took the shot when I had a chance. I do think he saw me up there shuffling around a little bit too, because he was looking up towards me. Put the arrow right where I aimed, a little bit in front of the front shoulder, aiming for the offside lung. And so that let the shot go. It looked like where I aimed, but something that I'd never really had happen before is I saw fletches and most of the shaft I thought sticking out. Uh-huh. So I started really getting worried. I was like, oh, what? I must have hit his shoulder, something serious. I thought maybe I only got like 6 inches of penetration or something, or could have maybe even grazed off and went off his onside out the back or something and not hit anything at all. He immediately started running and ran right into a tree. I think it was an oak tree that's probably it could have been a poplar actually. But anyways, it's a big tree. It was like a 24, 26 inch diameter tree, and snapped what arrow was hanging out off. And I still remember to this day, it flying through the air. And I'm just like, what is going on here? Like most of my shots, I'm kind of a bigger guy, and I shoot a 70 pounds, 30 and a half inch draw length, 560 grain arrow, fixed blade, like everything's set up for real good penetration, I would think. And to see that happen, I was very alarmed. So he kept running off after he ran into that tree. Didn't really see any signs of struggle running, no laboring running, no, signs of being hit vitally. He stopped about 150 yards. There's a bean field adjacent to this woods I'm in. He stopped in what I'm going to say is the corner of that bean field. And by the time I hung my bow up and grabbed my binoculars to see what he was doing standing there, like I thought maybe I'd at least be able to see which direction he was headed, so that way I could pick up the trail from there in a couple hours. I couldn't find him in my binoculars. And I spent 10 minutes probably up there scanning around, looking to see if I could just see some sign of which direction he went. So from the tree stand with my binoculars, I'm looking for blood. I'm trying to figure out what happened. I text my dad. I tell him, hey, I shot a buck. He's like, well, how big? How good? How good is the hit? I said, well, the arrow went right where I aimed, but I can't guarantee it. You know how it goes. I don't really know exactly what happened, but everything looks like it's going right. He said, well, just hang tight and, I'll be there in 45 minutes. He was hunting also, but probably like 45 minutes. No, not that long. 35 minutes away. So I waited in the tree stand, running the whole reel through my head, trying to figure out what happened and what's going on. I did get down over to the spot of the shot, looked for blood, did recover the arrow. I've got this is the broken piece here. So it's, here's the whole thing. I don't know how good that is showing up, but that's what was in them. And that's what broke off. So less than half the arrow. So I was pretty disturbed to see that too. Because I was estimating, holding it up to my other arrows, that I probably only had like 14 inches or so of arrow missing. Yeah. So looked for tracks right there at the spot of found his tracks easy because it was really easy tracking. There's a lot of leaf cover. He's a heavy deer. He left real heavy tracks. Didn't find a single spot of blood anywhere. Within that, I only walked the trail maybe 10 steps, not very far. Didn't want to spook him in case he maybe was potentially bedded up there at that 110, 150 yards, however far he ran. Got back in the tree, waited for my dad to show up. He showed up. We did the same thing. We picked back up on the tracks. We tracked him all the way through that woods. So over 100 yards, real easy to track his footprints. We found not a single drop of blood. And we're both going, oh boy, we're going to have a long day in store here trying to find this deer and recover him. Of course, he's running off of our property. So Dad's on the phone calling the neighbors and making sure they're okay with us trailing and everything. And the guy who owned the bean field said it was okay for us to go over there. So we start tracking through the bean field, and there's a little bit of a waterway. We drop down into this waterway and come back up, and that hill had hidden the deer. He was laying right where I last saw him. He dropped on the spot in the corner of that bean field. So both of us at 50 yards away saw this deer. We looked at each other because with him laying there like that, we just knew he was way bigger than what we both thought. Kind of gave each other a hug, and we both, I'm probably going to tear up a little. Losing my uncle, that was my dad's older brother. It was a rough year. So it was a neat experience to share that with my dad.
Well, first of all, sorry for your loss, and but congratulations on a tremendous deer.
Yeah.
Glad that your dad was there to help you sort of put the finishing touches on looking for that deer. And I know you probably have bittersweet thoughts about that whole entire experience, but it is an amazing deer. 13 points, as I mentioned earlier, 27-inch main beams. The official score, I think, for Pope and Young, and also in the Hoosier record book program, is a 182 and 4/8. It's just an incredible deer, and we're going to share some of those pictures out via social media. But what an incredible buck. Now, what were your first thoughts when you walked up to that deer? Because you obviously said it was a very special hunt for you.
Yeah, it was neat to have my dad there, like you said. And what's funny is, so I think it gross scored like 201. And he's got a drop tine on the right side. I've never killed one with a drop tine. I've killed them with split brows and with kickers out the back and stuff like that, but never like a 5-inch brow or drop tine. So that was pretty cool. But just overall, just the size of the deer. I never did get a chance to weigh him. Like I told you, I was kind of moving and stuff in October and just had some family stuff going on. So a lot of my scales and a lot of my hunting stuff and just personal items were all scattered about, and I didn't have a chance to weigh him, but he was huge deer. Just the size of him and the antlers was really neat. His G3s are, I think, pushing 14 inches here. Yeah. 13 inches on one side and a little over 12 and a half inches on the other. And they have some neat kickers out the back, and they're kind of bladed, and just a very, just deer of a lifetime. And it was definitely a good way for me to start that hunting year, or to, I don't know, just in general, just I was ready to get my drive again for hunting, because I'd had a lot of bad stuff going on that year. And it was pretty neat that the girl that I was telling you, that my cousin that I was going to take hunting, her dad also died in 2012 in a car accident. And then my uncle last year in a construction accident or machinery repair accident. And then texting with her about taking her for her first time. It just, it kind of felt like it was a little bit of a pat on the back from those two, because they were my hunting buddies too. Grew up with them. And so kind of a little something maybe special going on, just with that whole thing that made me pretty happy and excited. So
if you don't mind me asking, did you take her out the following week, or did you take her out during
Sure
the season?
did.
And how'd it go?
She had better luck than me on her first hunt. She killed a pretty nice 8-pointer. Yep.
Very nice. So obviously that was a great way to sort of wrap up the year, a very special moment between the two of you. And
it was very cool. It was neat. It was snow flying. Of course, it was 60 degrees the day I killed my buck the weekend before, and there was snow flying, and she was freezing cold the next weekend with a gun in her hand. So, yep, she did good. It was I was really proud of her.
Yeah, the weather can be very crazy in the Midwest, but I'm glad both of you had success with you getting a deer in a lifetime and her having success very early on. So, let's back up a little bit. You mentioned a couple of things that I thought were interesting in as you were telling the story about the day you got the deer. First thing is, you mentioned you get a stand on the property when you bought the property, or when you started hunting the property. I was just curious, is that a permanent stand? Was it a ladder stand? What kind of stand was it?
It's actually the ladder is some kind of homemade thing. It's like made out of like 1x1 tube steel. They're spread apart. There's two risers, vertical risers. They're spread apart maybe 8 inches. And then every foot or so, they've got a little piece welded in. Well, that's grown into this tree so much that the guy who sold the place couldn't recover it. It was just grown in. He was going to have to destroy it pretty much if he was going to take it with him. So, and then the stand itself is just a little lock-on style, very small platform. The seat's not, squirrels chewed the seat away. So there's nowhere to even sit. You just stand up there. But it's a good spot. Yep.
No, that's great. And, you were talking about your setup that you're using as far as your arrow and your broadhead and being able to wait for penetration. But what kind of broadhead were you using? What kind of arrow? You put it up quickly. I didn't get to see what it was. But
it's this is the actual arrow there. It's an iron wheel wide, 125 grain. The arrows are Axis 260 spine. I think, like I said, the total arrow weight's around 560 or something like that. I do have a outsert here, or a collar, not an outsert. Yeah, it's a collar. It's my elk arrow and deer arrow. I like shooting one arrow. I shoot a lot of 3D in the summertime. So I just like shooting with my hunting rig and making sure everything's good. So, it's 4-fletched. I like quiet, a lot of stability.
Yeah.
And
you found both pieces.
Sorry, what was that?
I said you found both pieces, which is pretty amazing. Sometimes you don't find both pieces.
Yeah. Well, the one was still in them. Yeah. So anyways, back to the shot. Yeah, that arrow went in perfect. Like I said, ahead of the shoulder, clipped the onside lung, went just above the heart and got into some really good arteries and above the heart, and then demolished the offside lung, broke through the ribs and was poking through, but never penetrated the skin. So that's why we never found any blood. The entrance hole was up so high and the exit was down low, but never broke through. If it would have poked through, it would have been a really easy track job. So he just never did fill up that cavity with blood to leave any kind of blood trail behind. Yeah. But I was happy with the performance for all the meat and bones that it went through at that angle. I was shooting a prime CT3 It's like 70 pound, 30-inch draw. So.
Congratulations. And yeah, you're talking about the shot, obviously a well-placed shot, just got slowed down by going through the ribs, and just, I've had it happen too, but it's a great shot. And, when you think about getting this, it's a buck that big, a Boone and Crockett caliber buck, especially for an archer, incredible accomplishment.
Yeah.
What do you do next? Do you have a goal next, or are you just like focused on enjoying the hunt and whatever comes your way in future deer seasons?
I really like, just, even the does, I didn't get worked up that much over them. I didn't have much time. I'm sure I would have been shaking really bad had I had a little more time to figure out how big he really was and that I was going to shoot him. But I get worked up over just, doe hunting. I like filling my freezer with deer meat. I got 2 kids, and we have a lot of cookouts and enjoy it all year long. So just to make sure I keep my freezer full with some nice doe meat, and it also, with dad farming and everything, try to keep the total herd count down and healthy, because a lot of the woods you can look around and see the browse lines, just they're hungry. So try to keep a healthy population. And I'd say some of my goals would be to, if my kids want to, get them out hunting. They're 9 and 7 right now. They've been with me a few times, but I think maybe this year they'll probably want to go a little more. They seem to be getting a little bit more fired up about it. So they're big fishermen right now, but I don't know how big of hunters they want to be, but not trying to push it on them, but we'll see how they like it.
My daughter started the same way. She started fishing, then she's gone out with me and sort of dabbled in it, in archery and bow hunting. But one of the other things, as you were sharing your story, that I made a note of to ask you. You mentioned when you first saw the deer, you thought it was actually moving away from you, but it ended up coming pretty close.
I was wondering if you put any away. Yeah, sorry, I thought he was angling away, not really totally going the opposite direction, but I thought he was going to be farther away than 20 yards by the time he got into this clearing area where I had to shoot. So.
Did you put any scents out, or did you do anything to try and track him? It was just one of those things where it just happened to walk naturally and presented with a great shot.
Yeah. I think I'd say it's just that stand location. It's about 50 yards away from a fence row along that bean field. And I think it's just kind of one of those natural spots where off to my left side, there's a real steep ravine, and there's just no way to get around that. And it's just more or less a funnel area where they just pretty much have to go through there or cut across the open field, which they'll cut across the open field. I've seen them do that in like gun season when they get a lot of pressure, but it seems like during bow season, they always stick right there in that woods. And so I've got 50 yards to my right and about 55 yards to my left, and I'm right in the middle of it. And most of the deer activity just happens to be passing through right there by me. So I think it's just stand location.
Yes, that's a good natural setup where obviously they're going to be channeled toward you, or at least come pretty close to your proximity. So where's the deer now? What'd you do with it? Did you get him mounted?
Yeah, he's still at the taxidermy. So that's kind of a funny story too. Initially, when we had some guys, because like I said, I don't know anything about scoring deer. I just know what good deer are, and took it to a couple people, and they scored it a lot higher than what he actually was. And so I was a little worried. They had me worried. They're like, "Oh, you need to go get the rack, and keep it in your possession, because if that gets stolen, that could be something somebody wants to steal." And so I went and got it, and at the 60-day mark or 61-day mark or whatever it's supposed to be, I took it to an official scorer by my house. And after that, I found out, that he wasn't a world record deer or anything like that, but still, of course, a great deer. I took it back to the taxidermy, and he still has it, and I haven't bugged him yet about it. So it should be done, I'd hope, within the next month or so. My birthday's coming up. Maybe I can get it done by then. So
yeah. Well, again, congratulations. It's an incredible deer. When you see the pictures, they're absolutely amazing. This deer just pops out at you. And, one of those situations where I think everything just worked out for you, and you had to deal with some challenges this year. And so that's a nice way to at least end your deer season. So, anything else you wanted to share with us about the story, or anything led up? I mean, you did a great job recounting the hunt and how everything went, but I don't know if anything else pops out.
No, I don't think so. That's about it. I really appreciate it. And thanks for asking for the story.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Bowhunting podcast. Again, congratulations on an incredible buck. And for everybody who is listening, if you're thinking about hunting out of state, Ohio, Iowa come to mind, but Indiana offers some incredible whitetail deer hunting, still offers some very affordable tags for non-residents. And you have in certain areas good amount of public land with the National Forest and the WMAs and things like that. So David,
some buddies of mine. Oh yeah, well, some buddies of mine go down to Hoosier National Forest, and we've had some pretty good luck. I killed a doe down there 2 years ago. So yep, there's a lot of national forests all around the whole country. So get out there and just give it a shot. It's a lot of fun.
Well, David, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on the Bowhunting Podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for downloading the Petersen's Bowhunting Podcast. All bowhunting, all the time. Pick up the latest issue of Petersen's Bowhunting magazine on your local newsstand or connect with us online at bowhuntingmag.com.